All right.
Introduction.
Half the episode sticker.
Okay.
It's okay. Welcome everybody to week number 2 of Nichsefo, Nafshi, Chabura, Nichsefo, Nafshi. As we said last week, Klein, we're all searching, yearning, want to get connected to Tzadikim and grow in Avodas Hashem. We have the great honor of being joined tonight by Yoeli, Klein. He was from our early mashpiyim here in Breslov, Hempstead, when we were still down Lamata me Asar Tvachim, really below Asar Tvachim. And Baruch Hashem, he came, he went. It was Nasal and Eretz Yisrael, and he came back to bring us some goods. So with no further ado, Rabbi Yoeli.
I just want to correct something that Moti said. He said, "We're all yearning and searching. We're also finding because of the great teachers that we have."
Okay.
Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
Thank you.
Yagati umatzasi. If you toil, you'll find. There's no question about it. We're all searching, yeah. So yeah, as much as every Jewish mother, for some reason or another, the greatest dream of them is that their son is a lawyer or a doctor. I happen to be none of them, and I don't even think I got my BTL, my bachelor's in Talmudic law, in the end. So I'm not a lawyer in any way whatsoever. But the lawyers, they're known for reading the fine print, right? I mean, they put in the fine print, and they have to read the fine print. But regular people, we don't roll like that, you know? I don't roll like that. You see something, you're like, okay, you open up a box of something, you throw out those little papers with all a million words, and you look at the instructions, you build it, you make it, and you go weiter. So, with that said and done, like in the olden days, they used to have that thing. And we used to watch out of those big cube boxes called VCRs, like television sets. And, I think you said that joke, the guy goes in to buy a beer in 7-Eleven and his Blockbuster card just falls out and the guy's like, you don't need ID, it's okay, we're good, you're good. It's okay. So back in those days, there used to be that thing in the beginning of every movie that said something. It said like modified something. You never read that, you're just like, what is it? Whatever, it's just a warning or something, I don't know what it is. Yeah, but in the end of the day, you don't read these things. So, I'll give that as the prelude and as the fine print for this year is that Baruch Hashem, it's a Breslov shir, and Baruch Hashem, we're all going to become close to Nachman in different ways. But when I teach Breslov teaching, so whatever I say that is from Rav Nachman, Be'ez Hashem, hopefully I'm quoting it in the right ways. And whatever's not, which is quite a lot of gematrias and shetlach and connections and stuff, that's my own stuff. With the fine print over there, I'm giving it to you very loud. It's my own stuff, and it comes with that warning. But Be'ez Hashem, together, I think it should come out as Be'ez Hashem pretty nice. So this week we were learning in the morning, and Baruch Hashem, we have a small Chabura in the mornings of Sichas Aran, which we really started a bunch of years ago in Briarwood with I think Ishtab Chosar Nefesh, and Mati carried it through in my years in Eretz Yisrael, so we just, Baruch Hashem, picked it up. So this week someone made a comment on the side, one of the more Hasidic members of the shul. Obviously Breslov is a Hasidic also, but, I don't know how you term this, but, one of the Echtige Hasidim. And he said, Yekes and Breslovers, it's mamish like that, polar opposites. So we were like, okay. But David was there, and he said, not true. He said, actually, Yekes are probably the closest to any Hasidus, is they're closest to Breslov. Right? And we were discussing it for a little bit. He was giving over the whole mahalach of that. Breslovers, they're the only ones that daven mizman and keep halacha and things like that. I was giving a ride to Rav Israel Orbach. He is Rav Shlomo Zalman Orbach's son. I think he passed away. I'm not sure about 100%, but I think he passed away a few years ago. But I was going to give him a ride. And we were driving from Yerushalayim to Beitar, and he saw in my front seat was a little Likutei Tefillah, so he picked it up, flipped through it. He said, my father, Rav Shlomo Zalman, he wasn't so into Hasidim. He was a man of peace, he loved every single Jew, but he wasn't into the whole thing. He said, but the Breslovers, he held off. Because he used to go every day to the Grashul, and he would hear them davening, the Sikha, Nates, every morning Nates, power. So he's like, he said they kept halacha, they daven bizman, he held to them. So, obviously we have that Yekish connection that we do try to daven bizman, we do try to keep halacha, like Rav Nachman said, the way the Shulchan Aruch says, without making knetches and our own pshatlach and that. But there's more to that I mentioned then. That I mentioned then already was that Baruch Hashem, I think here we have some cholent, and cholent is a very popular Jewish food, and everyone should keep eating cholent, their whole life. If not, there could be a yam and yichus. But the thing about cholent is that a couple of different foods is that we eat, like gefilte fish, they say in Shabbos, that we eat because we don't want to have any boira problems, so we just smush all the fish together, grind it up till you can't taste anything, even the bones, and you have a delicious thing called gefilte fish. So cholent toast, you got to be careful. So we just throw everything in a big pot, smush it all together, hence the name cholent, and we eat it all together, and that's great for cholent. But for the insides of a person, it's very detrimental. Maybe cholent also in the end, but for the insides, for our personalities, for our development as people, to have cholent in the inside is very, very unhealthy. And the truth is that most of us walk around most of our lives in inner cholent. All of our feelings and all of our thoughts are just like running around, good, bad, good, I'm pretty good, I'm very bad. Everything's just mixed up. And the truth is that we have to be like one of those Tupperwares that have the little sections. It's a little OCD, but you have your rice in one, you have your potatoes in the other, and the chicken in the other. They can't mix the sauces. In our lives, we have to try to attain that from the cholent of what's going on in our lives. And Reb Nachman taught one of the main teachings of Reb Nachman was a zamra, Reish Pei Beis, a zamra lekai ba'oidi, which basically Reb Nachman says is that we all have a big cholent inside of us. We have good and we have bad. And our avodah, like Raren said, was saying, was to search out and to find, right? To search out and to find good. And every single one of us have good points. And they might be minuscule, they might be tiny, but those good points, and then you look at the good point and it might have some bad inside of it, so we look deeper until we find mamish, pintel yid, a point that we're mamish pure good. And when we find that pure good, we start to, find it and to feel a little bit besimcha, and through that we could come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he says. And the stories with Rab Levi Yitzchak Mibarditchev, all these stories that highlight the idea of Zamra, of finding the good, like Rab Levi Yitzchak was walking outside with his Talmidim after a very spiritual shachris, and they saw the guy in his talis and tefillin greasing his axles, and the people were laughing at him, take off your talis and tefillin and then grease your axles. And Rab Levi Yitzchak turned to Hashem and he said, Rabbi Hashem, how sweet are your children, that even while they're greasing their axles, they're wearing talis and tefillin, and he was amazed by it. And when you think about it, he's not saying, the other story is also with the Yom Kippur, that he came and he saw a Yid eating on Yom Kippur, and he said, Rabbi Yid, do you know today's Yom Kippur? He said, yeah. He says, are you deathly ill? It's a Sakaras Nefesh. He goes, I'm perfectly fine. He starts munching on Yom Kippur. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak just turned to Hashem and he said, Rabbi Hashem, a Yid, even a Yid that eats on Yom Kippur, chas v'sham, to stay alive, only truth comes out of his mouth. So what's the pshat? The pshat is not that like we're avoiding the bad, we're saying that this guy is pure good. No, the guy is eating on Yom Kippur. Levi Yitzchak said that. But he also has something that's really good, that he's saying the truth. And this guy is greasing his axles, but he has something good, that he's wearing his talis and tefillin there. There's always a way of looking at things on the good. Nebuch, I've been in Eretz Yisrael back and forth quite a bit, 21 years now. And when I first got there, it wasn't so prevalent, but now it's becoming more and more prevalent that the Yidden are getting tattoos all over their arms and their things, whatever. You read this Adairis, We watch Netflix, they get tattoos. So that's the way it works. But when I see these Yidden that are obviously Jews walking around like that, so you could very easily fall into like, oh, Isser da Raisa tattoo, it's so ugly, it's so not Jewish even. And I look at their other arm and I go, wow, look at that clean arm. He hasn't tattooed yet. The Nikudas time was beautiful, clean arm, no tattoo. Could have tattooed it, You have to just know where to focus on it. This reminds me, a couple of weeks ago, I went in an Uber to the airport, and I've said this over many times already because it was just so inspiring. This guy picked me up, 6'3", huge guy, doesn't look Jewish at all. His name is Paul, and he starts telling me his life story, and it's just unbelievable. If it's true, I don't even know, but it's definitely an amazing story that he grew up and he's still not religious in any way whatsoever. He says he takes people, Jewish people all the time because he works out of Muncie, and they always ask him what these things taste like. He goes, I don't know. This is what it tastes like. If it didn't taste it, I don't know what to say. So he says, that's what I do. That's what I eat. In mitoich the conversation, he tells me that he was a bouncer for 25 years in a bar, and he found it very interesting that he only recently found out that his name is Pinchas, and Pinchas was a warrior, and he said, that's what I did for 25 years. I took people and threw them out and beat them up like I was doing it. I was like, wow. I found some Ramazim in the Psukim, I gave it to him, he was like, wow, unbelievable. But he said that, he is still living a lifestyle that has zero connection to Yiddishkeit. He did not know what the first word of the Torah was, Bereshis. He had no idea. I said, Bereshis? No idea. So, but he says, you know what? During all these years as a bouncer, never once did I get a tattoo or a piercing. He said, I don't know why, but my father, he's a Holocaust survivor. He gave me a little Jewish thing that this is not Jewish. I don't do these things. And he said, do you know what it means to be a bouncer and not get a tattoo or a piercing? He's like, it's weird, I was like, weird. Right, it's part of the uniform. And he said, nah. So you have Nekudas Tovos in every single Yid. And Rav Nachman says that these Nekudas Tovos, when you focus on them, they mamish do, I wouldn't say magical things, but they arouse the good within you, and that good starts to change your whole insides. It's magic. It's magic. And so I have these two mices that happened to me mamish years ago, but some of the people that are involved in the mices, but Rav Nachman says that it works with remote control, meaning that if you look at another guy's Nekudas Tovos, it arouses him to tshuva. He has no idea why, he has no idea what happened. So, obviously these are all words that are emes v'yatzev, but to see it come out and the way it came out in these two stories was pretty amazing. I had one friend that was keeping almost zero in religion at that point, but he was still holding on to certain things. I slept over at his house one night, and he wakes up early in the morning to get to the train, to get to work, and as he's putting on his socks and his shoes and his pants and everything, I hear him mumbling. So I'm like, what is he doing? So I'm like listening closer, and he's saying Berchas HaShachar. And he runs out to the train, spends the rest of the day. First thought, I'm like, you're touching your shoe, your foot, like you're saying Berchas HaShachar. And then I just turned to Shemayim and I just said, Rab Levi Yitzchak, what would he say? He would say, Gevald Rebbeinu Shalom. Even when the guy is touching his shoe and putting on his socks, he's davening, he's speaking to you, he just wants to be close to you. And I just was focusing on that the whole day. And then Pitom that night we get back together, and the guy, out of nowhere, no interest in Yiddishkeit, starts asking me these deep philosophical questions about Yiddishkeit. We go on for 3 hours into the night speaking about Yiddishkeit until he finally says, you know what? My other friend just went to Eretz Yisrael. I want to go to Eretz Yisrael. Maybe we're going to find something. And he went back to Eretz Yisrael, and he became, Baruch Hashem, partially religious, and now he's not religious at all. But that goes to show you that you gotta follow the story till the end and keep doing these things and keep going. But another guy, that same Tekufa, I was driving to Yeshiva at that point, and I was thinking about this guy. And he, at that point, this guy was holding literally nothing, like El Zilcho of Yiddishkeit. And I was just trying to bring up Nekudas Tovos for this guy. And so I remember I came to his house once, and he says, Yoeli, what time is Shkia? I said, what do you care about Shkia? You don't keep any religion, not wearing yarmulke, So he said, no, I got to put on tefillin. I was like, it's in 4 minutes. Oh my gosh. He runs to the cupboard. And I'm like, what was that about? Where did that come from? So he said he was in Kosher Delight. Older crowds will remember Kosher Delight. I don't even think they have any left. Good, quick food. And he said he was sitting there, and the holy Rab Shik Yidin came in. Those two guys, they've been there for 50 years. They never aged yet, but they're there forever with 1,000 books. He goes, and my friend goes, listen, I have every book. I'm going to throw them straight in the dumpster outside. I have all your books. Don't give me any books. Give me something that can change my luck. So the guy looks at him and he goes, Tzaddik, put on tefillin every day. And he walked away. And for some weird reason, my friend, boom, it hit him in the heart. He's like, I need better luck. I'm going to put on tefillin. He started putting on tefillin every day. So obviously I asked him, what happened with your luck? So he said, for 2 months, it was amazing. He got a better job. Things started working out. And then everything went to Gehenna again. So I said, why are you still putting on tefillin? He goes, do you know what God's going to do to me now if I take it off? He's like, let's just keep it where it's at with God. Kitzer, so I was thinking, in this ride, I was thinking, here's a yid that's mamish holding nothing. And 4 minutes before Shkia, he decides to put on tefillin. I don't think I've ever reached a tefillin like that in my life. Every morning you wake up, you open your eyes, put on tefillin. A yid that mamish holding nothing, and he's putting on tefillin that matzav. Wow. I drive to yeshiva, I learn for a seder, I'm coming back, and a guy randomly that I haven't spoken to in years calls me, he goes, listen, I was thinking about getting money together for this particular guy I was just thinking about, that he should go to Eretz Yisrael with the chevra, a couple of chevra are going, and sure enough, obviously the shorthand of the story is that he mamish went back and he also became marginally religious and he remains marginally religious, Baruch Hashem. But the amazing thing is that the Nekudas Tovas, they mamish do amazing things for yourself and for others. For others, we just saw in those stories. For yourself also, Rav Nachman again was not, a lot of times the external view of Breslov from the world is that a bunch of guys, either it's just the guys dancing on the trucks, or it's like a bunch of guys are happy, ignoring the whole world, ignoring everything. It's like Rav Nachman was very into, again, separating the cholent, clarifying what's going on, taking the good from the bad, and focusing on those good points, and through doing that, then you'll be able to, for sure, tackle the bad. I've said this over a few times. It says that Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim, right? It's the day like Purim. So we know, Purim is so heilig, and we're coming up, Mishnah Chasad, Ma'abim Simcha, coming up to Purim. So, it's an incredible day. But ki means 4 things. One of the things that ki is it's like, but ki also could mean because of. So Yom Kippur is ki Purim, is because of Purim. Only because you have the simcha can you come to really cry out. Which Machin gives over in one of the Torahs in the Kutaran, Bechia, is Rashi Tevis B'Shimcha Yegilin Kol Hayom. That only through joy can you come to a proper cry. Can you come to mamish cry out? So this is the concept here that Rav Nachman is trying to say, that we're not going to be joyous stam. Obviously, there is such a concept in the shtuta, and there's such a concept of just standing in your head or just singing a niggin, doing whatever you have to do. But the nitty gritty of mamish really being the simcha is trying to find within yourself these good points, focusing on them, and letting them bring you up to be besimcha. And there's a famous line from Nachman, mitzvah gadol aliyas b'simcha tavis. So I love how a lot of times Israelis or people that speak different languages have different translations of these words. So Yosef Carduna, on one of his CDs, he says, it is a great mitzvah to always be upbeat. It's not the classic translation. And at first, Havana Rishon, you're like, wait, that's not the translation. It's a happy, but you know what? There's a lot of truth to that. To be upbeat, Not always you can be happy. Sometimes you just have to listen to a nigga. You just gotta give a little time. So you gotta do whatever you could do to have that upbeatness, But it's funny because I once went to the Amshon of a Rebbe. He was at a bris and I was there. Everyone was pushing, so I pushed my way in, and he gave me a good couple of seconds there. And I was speaking to him because my wife was pregnant with our next child, and our child before then was special needs. He still is, and so we were fearful, like what's going to be. So I asked the Rebbe for a bracha. So he said, should daven and everything should be good. And he looked at me, he said, and for this child also that's special, we have to hope that he should get better. And I was like, okay. And then the guy pulled me, physically off of him, and because the Rebbe will stay there with you forever. I'll just keep talking to you. So fine. And then I was like, hope? What is that? Like a Jewish thing? We hope? Is it daven to yearn? Hope? And then the next day I was davening, and this is Kaveh El Hashem, Chazek Ve'am Yisrael Kaveh El Hashem. What? He spoke to me in English. I spoke to him in English. He speaks English, but he's American. I don't know how up to par his English is from, he still speaks English, but he speaks English well. So I thought maybe it was lost in the translation, Kitzer, I saw that and I was like, Kavi Hashem, Chazak HaMizbeach. A lot of times we're hoping for things, we're yearning for things, and it doesn't come. So we have to strengthen our heart and we have to keep going. And Baruch Hashem, not Baruch Hashem, it's been 8 years and he's still special, but I'm still hoping, because Chazak HaMizbeach, you have to keep hoping. And it's funny because they came out with these vaccines. I'm not getting involved. We're not starting a conversation. Please don't throw things. Yes or no, doesn't matter what I say, someone's going to throw something at me. Nothing. But when they came out with it, they were like, like the whole thing is like messing with the DNA of a person. They were tining, and I don't know what happened to them now. They're tining that they could heal a lot of different things through this method of messing with the DNA. And they said that one of the things is autism, that they might be able to fix, find out what strand of DNA and just do that. And my kid would wake up the next morning and be like, hey, what's going on? Like... And then he starts speaking French and Spanish and Portuguese because he watches that on YouTube all day. We're like, whoa, slow down, buddy. But Be'ezus Hashem, there's a story with Gutnik. He's a very wealthy Chabadsker, and I read this interview with him, and he said that the Rebbe told him, the famous story. He circled Mamish on a map in Australia and said, dig here, dig here, dig here. You'll find gold. So he dug and he found diamonds and he's a billionaire, Baruch Hashem. And he said in the interview, but the Rebbe didn't say diamonds, he said gold. And I still believe till this day that I will find gold. It's like 50 years ago. He's like, no, there's going to be gold somewhere. If the Rebbe said gold, there's gold there. I found diamonds and became a billionaire in time, But that's the thing. So we have to continuously hope. The all upbeat is a very good translation. But that's the Nekudas Tovos. We have to try to find the Nekudas Tovos to give us a good beat, to get a good beat out of what we're doing. It's this, the first shtickle in Likutei Halachos. When Nosson speaks about Nekudas Tovos, he mentions this week's parsha. It's one of the main points in that first shtickle, that the Klein brought all of their materials to build the Mishkan to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu took it all and built it. And Tcheles, Argaman, there was different materials, different colors, there were dyes, there was everything. All of those things were the Givon line, were the supernal colors of each Yid in Klal Yisrael, of their Nekudas Tovos. Every Yid has his own unique Nekuda Tova that he could bring in, and he brings to the table, and he brought it to Moshe in the form of some physical thing. And Moshe Rabbeinu built the entire Mishkan just from these physical manifestations of Nekudas Tovos, and it just, it's shown, with Hashem's Shechina, which is really from each Yid, brought together with the Tzaddik, with the Mishkan. That's the Nekudas Tovos a little bit. And obviously, I found this in my life very much, that along the road of each day, you come across things that you hear, that you speak about. You say, wow, that's amazing, I got to work on that. And then that's it. It's like when people are learning, you have to know, fighter, you'll never get back to that question in your life. So, wow, that's amazing, I have to work on that. Never get back to it in the rest of your life. We have thousands of these things. Wow, I should really work on that. Done. Rav Nachman told us to do us better this. And obviously there's endless meaning to it and endless reasons for it. But one of the things that I found is that it gives you time. It gives you time to take all these little things that you say, wow, I really got to work on that, and actually do it. Actually think about it. Actually focus on it. So you have this thing called Nekudas Tovos. So you have this thing called this Bayadis, and if you take them together, as a package deal, which are very advisable when you're dealing with Breslov Hasidus, not to take one particular thing and say that's the whole deal, because then you're going to skew everything. It's a whole package deal. You got to be b'simcha, you got to be... I always say I was at a Purim Suda many years ago, and people were on all sorts of very mind-altering substances at that Purim Suda, and this guy was there, and he was a hippie with long dreadlocks, Baruch Hashem, and he was learning Breslov and everything, and I remember he just was crying at a certain point there in the Suda, and he goes, Yoeli, Ahmed is not as cool as I thought he was. He's serious about things, He was like, I'm learning more. Like, I used to just learn, the hippie tires and the deep things. Like, now I'm learning the whole Likutei Moharan. He's pretty intense. I was like, yeah, he's a package deal. You could learn 2 tires and just, dance your whole life, or you could learn the whole deal. So you're going to do as better of this. You have this thing called Nekudas Tovos. It's a perfect time. Say, okay, Ribono Shel Olam. I had a friend that was going through a lot of bilbulim in his life, inner turmoil, this and that, Breslov, what type of Breslov, everything was just confusing. We all go through those things, and And I met him a couple months later, and he seemed so happy and at ease. I was like, what happened? He said, when I stopped learning there's such a thing called Nekudas Tovas, and I started actually taking 10 minutes of my Zbaitis and just speaking about my Nekuda Tova, how great it is, how beautiful, how amazing. He said, I was just filled with such simcha that like the bilbulim just fell. Like, there's no simcha like Hataras Sveikas, When things become clear in our inside, when the cholent starts to sift, and we start to see that we actually do have great things, good things, and we're not doing that thing like, therefore I'm a megalomaniac and I'm a narcissist now because I'm the greatest. No, they're nekudas, they're points, they're gorgeous little diamonds filled with all the garbage. I got to deal with all the garbage also, but I'm polishing those diamonds, picking them up, rejoicing with them, and then I'm going to have enough light and koach to go and deal with all the rest of this stuff. It cleans up everything. It helps everything. It says in this week's parsha, we speak about the Aron, and the Aron has dimensions. So all the things in dimensions. There you go. So if there's going to be a Yekish parsha, there's basically the whole entire parsha just dimensions. 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. It's all numbers. And I see over here in the back we have a huge clock right in there. They say shmuas from Breslov that we don't daven to the clock. Like even in Vasikin, like they just daven, and hopefully we make it not by the second. At the same time, there's clocks in every Breslov shul, and they're marked on all the zamanim. Okay, so this week's parsha has all these dimensions. So you have the Aron HaKodesh, which was the only keli that went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and its dimensions were 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. Now, sometimes you're building something in your house, you got the spot, so you have 5 feet and 6 inches and 0.2. But when you're building your house, you have the option to get the 5-foot table. Because it's just a 5-foot table. It makes everything work normal. Because you have a 10-foot space, a 5-foot table, it works. And so when HaKadosh Baruch was creating the Mishkan, he could have very easily created the Kodesh HaKadoshim in a way with the Aron that it's 2 by 1 by 1, or 3 by 2 by 2, even. But he made it chatzi. And that was obviously teaching us something. I believe I saw this from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but I could be wrong. Could be just making it up myself. But either way, the chatzi is that we're all half. We're all broken. We're all on one level broken. We could say, there's nothing more whole than the broken Jewish heart. If you want me to get out my guitar, but it's not my style, so I'm going to leave it out for now. But there's also, chatzi is from a lashon of chutz, of outside. It's broken, it's in half, it's outside. Chutz la'aretz, where we're found. But the amazing thing is that chutz, outside, indicates that there's inside. Bereshis, they say, why did it start with beis? It should have started with aleph, the Torah. So be, within, means that there's something inside here. Now we're in this world and it's filled with all the bilbul and all the craziness. Aleph was Ayin Seif, then Beis, there's a creation. And now that this creation with all this stuff, we have to remember that there's something inside everything here that's animating it, and there's something more than what's going on in the surface level. So basically, chutz and chatzi is saying that there's two sides. Yeah, you have good and you have bad, and that's part of you. And when you recognize that, and when you're able to say that I have nekudas tovas and I have nekudas shcheiros, and you're able to bring them all together, that's what goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Nothing else goes in. It's not this whole perfect thing. I am perfect. I am, just tzaddik. I go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. No, you go in with that chatzi, with that inside and outside. When you realize and you see what's in, what's out, the Rebbe has in Torah Vav, Baki Ve'ayel, Baki Ve'nafik, going in, going out. The Rebbe was very into knowing where you're holding. Are you on an aliyah? Or are you on a yerida? Volba speaks about the Yemei Ava, Yemei Sinna, something like that. It's very good to know where you're holding, what type of a day you're having, to be conscious of what's going on inside of you. And this is part of the birur of Nekudas Tovas. So, another point of this is, just to bring it all together a little bit, if we have a couple of seconds left, maybe, that the Aron was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and it had upon it the two kruvim, the two childlike images that were formed from gold, I think, and they had these wings going up and almost touching. And my kid came home with the shaila from the Vach, And it was, why were the Kruvim not Zaidis and Babis? Why were they kids? So I gave a nice answer, I think, to show the purity of the children. Tatis are very great, they know a lot, but there's nothing like the purity of children. Okay, whatever. I have to make it up, so just instead of researching my son's Parsha sheet. But another point to that is that the Kruvim were not identical. They were very similar, but they were not identical. One was a man and one was a woman, or a boy and a girl, however the images were, which means that they were different. So obviously when they faced each other, it was Klai, so it was good. When they faced away, that's not good. But the point is that they were different images. We say that kasha limta zivug and kikriyas zamsav. It's hard. It's really hard to find a zivug, And whenever I meet someone and I give greetings and I give brachas to people, I always give them the shibizaycha to find the zivug hagen. And even if you're married, to continue to find your zivug, because if you think you found it already, go for help now. You gotta continuously find your zivug. So we always need that kriyas yamsuf, that zivug. But it's funny because finding a zivug is unity, is connection, and kriyas yamsuf was a split. So you never really think about that. You're like, wow, what a miracle! You need a miracle. They could have done other miracles. I don't know. Hashem has a lot of miracles going on in his Torah and in history. We had to pick the one thing that was a split, kriyas yamsuf, to say come together. And I think that the Nakuda is that in order for there to be unity, in order for there to be true connectivity between two people and between two things, you have to have the distinction. Again, the same concept as distinguishing within you the good and the bad is with a husband and a wife. You have to distinguish, especially nowadays in America, who is a man, who is a woman, and then what are you and what am I? Your roles. And you could just imitate and just say, well, a man goes to work, makes the money, and you stay home and you take care of kids. Why you not do? Why? You could do it like that, but you're probably in for a rude awakening, because if you remember, we went through the sea, and the Mitzrayim thought that they'll also go through the sea because it was open, and they got swallowed in. So the same sea that you could get through and you could make it on dry land will swallow someone else in. So each person has to find within their own house who they are, who their wife is, who, again, in the insides of a person, who and what your Nekudas Tavas are, and then they can have this unity when they have that distinction. I think the part of the Aron, of the Kruvim themselves, that had the most hashras Shechina, so to speak, was like this laser beam was right in that little speck that was in between the two wings, that wasn't almost touching, that like the voice, and nowadays they'd probably call it the Bluetooth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that no one else could hear except for Moshe, would go straight into Moshe through that little space. And that space is, in Hebrew, like Bain, right? The 13 Midas Saturn and Deshben, I have a lot of interesting things to say on that. You could ask me on different parts of it, but I believe that a lot of them have very unique pshatim that fit in with their numbers. So the 13th one is Shnei Chesum Amachishim Zed Zeh, two psukim that are clashing. Ad Sheva HaKosav HaShlishi Yachriya Beinehem. And the Lashon is Beinehem, because there is going to be a dry land in between the two walls of the Kriyas Hamsav, and it's on that dry land that we walk through and that we unify. You need to have the walls, you need to have the Bain, which is very unique, because just tying it in with everything, Bain is from the same shorish as Bina. And the way Rashi explains Chachma, Bina, and Das, there's a lot of explanations of Rashi, and Chumash explains Chachma is just raw knowledge, and Bina is taking that and grinding through it. So what does it mean? How does it work? Das is when you grind that knowledge, you come out, so this is a pshat. You come out with something else. So Bina is that, again, that distinctive capability to take two sides, Beinehem, and to make something from that together. And it also shares the same shorish as Baina, to build. Zot Omeret, that if you would build something out of bricks and you just say like, well, let's just take the bricks and line them up. No, you have to distinguish that these are bricks, and you have to distinguish how to place them, each in their own way, that when you build it up, it'll come together as a true binyan. So I think that the clarity came through that very place, that little space, so to speak, between the wings, and that's where we're hoping that with Hashem's help, that we'll be zeichet to mamish. The inside of the aron again was wood. It was covered with gold inside and outside, but it was wood. Adam Eitz Asada, like simplicity, so straight. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants these simple things. We think sometimes that things are big and far out, but no, like just Avram was Aleph Beis, Echad Haya Avram. Avram's name starts with Aleph Beis. Just take one thing and go to the next, slow, small. Nekuda Teva is a small thing. Just speak about one little thing that you did, that you have, that you've done, that you've experienced, and just build it up inside of you. And Hashem should help that. We should be zeichet that, we should clarify the chalent, and we should have the clarity of the Nekuda Teva to bring us up. And even if we can't, still enjoy the chalent. Shkoya.